It has gone down in history as the day that shook American democracy. The day of extreme violence when up to 2,500 people, including members of the far-right groups such as the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, forced their way into the US Congress to try to put a halt to the certification of Joe Biden's election victory. It began as Trump supporters headed to the US Capitol as Donald Trump prepared to make a speech as he continually tweeted about a stolen election. At midday, he began to talk, soon urging his supporters to converge on the Capitol.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
The crowd at the Capitol began to swell as officers reported metal poles being thrown at them as they desperately called for backup. The rioters broke through police lines and fully into the building. Key political figures like Mike Pence and Nancy Pelosi were evacuated to safety. The police were overwhelmed for several hours as the protesters smashed windows and rifled through papers. The situation only really calmed as Trump tweeted to tell the protesters to go home, and as it was confirmed that one protester, Ashley Babbitt, had been shot and killed by the police. Trump again tweeted, referring to those at the Capitol as great patriots. Well, after the riot, over 900 people were sentenced, well over half of them to jail. But 4 years later, what do Americans now make of that historic day? Well, Fanny Allard with Fraser Jackson revisit the Capitol riots for France 24.
Right here, we're going to walk down to the Capitol.
There's great energy. You know, people were dancing to YMCA songs and waiting for the speakers to come up.
January 6th was an insurrection. It was an attempt to stop the peaceful transfer of power and subvert the 2020 presidential election.
People showed up to protest a stolen election. They were praying on the grass. Some of the Capitol Police let some of the people in. Some of the Capitol Police launched munitions onto a peaceful praying crowd.
It was a very disturbing day, a very frightening day. It made me very concerned about the future of our government institution.
January 6th, it was very much a patriotic, elated type feeling.
It lines up with the definitions of terrorism. It was a very dark day for America.
Had no idea we were going to the Capitol until Trump said we were, peacefully and patriotically, to let our voices be heard.
Brandon Fellows is one of the January 6ers.
I didn't actually know the White House was there until I started going through the security checkpoints. I was like, wait, the White House is... You know, I've never been to D.C. Probably within an hour, it was, it was just jam-packed in there.
Like tens of thousands of Americans, the young man from upstate New York answered the call of then-President Donald Trump and traveled to the American Capitol in 2021.
I did not appreciate the what I viewed as tyrannical lockdowns. I was not appreciative of them telling us, you know, we couldn't operate our businesses, we had to wear masks here and there, rather than giving us the option to decide. I didn't like how they shut down churches or how I had to go to speakeasy gyms. I also felt like it could have been stolen and I wanted them to look into it. And because I never saw Trump before. And I thought this might be the last one. Wanted to show my support to what a great job he did those 4 years.
Wearing a Centurion mask, Brandon's image was broadcast around the world on January 6th. In these images taken from his phone, we see him at the Ellipse Park south of the White House. He then followed the crowd and marched towards the Capitol, allegedly with no violent intent.
They're shouting, they're letting us in, meaning the Capitol Police. So some people just immediately believe it and go in, but I was skeptical. So I say, okay, people are saying it's our house. I've heard it called the People's House. I also am well aware of how America was founded. We have a right and a duty to overthrow a tyrannical government. So that's when I walked in.
Carried away by the energy of the moment, the then 26-year-old changed course.
Power struggle. Somebody hands me a joint. I at first say no, But then they said, they compelled me with, well, how many people are going to be able to say they smoked weed in the Capitol? So I said, okay, fine. So I puffed, and I passed. There we go.
On his way out of the building, he did a famous interview with CNN, which allowed the FBI to identify him.
Obviously, there's a power struggle. There's the peaceful guys that were like, no, we don't want to do that. Then there was that guy. You know, he just said, well, oh well, I'm breaking it in.
Brandon was unaware that day that his life had been turned upside down. 10 days after January 6th, he was arrested and sentenced to 3 years in prison.
Peace circle, breach the line. We need backup.
Daniel Hodgers is one of the Washington police officers deployed to the Capitol on January 6th.
I could hear over the radio that there were officers already at the Capitol getting overwhelmed by the violence that the people were causing. So they called for backup, and that was us. We ran to the vans that we had taken downtown, put on all our hard gear, the pads that you see in the video, and made our way over here to the West Terrace.
He says the crowd was far from peaceful.
The crowd was more sparse. Further out from the Capitol, they were content to just yell at us, call us traitors, oath breakers, telling us to remember our oaths, stormtroopers, that kind of thing. As we got closer, though, the crowd became more dense, more aggressive.
The police officer and his platoon tried in vain to keep the crowd out of the building, but faced with sheer numbers, they finally crumbled.
There was no getting that territory back once we lost the line. So we retreated. We went up some stairs there and went inside the Capitol building and I reorganized there. Put on my gas mask, and that's where you see the viral video that I've been in, just a pitched battle between a couple dozen police officers and just an endless number of the horde.
The man behind the mask is Daniel Hodgers, being brutally attacked.
I was in there as long as I could until eventually I got pinned against a metal door frame. I was unable to defend myself there, and some attackers took advantage of my vulnerability. Someone was able to rip away my riot baton and beat me in the head with it. I was being crushed. I was exposed to all the tear gas and the OC spray or pepper spray. And at that point, the only thing I could do was call for help.
These images moved Americans from all walks of life and helped establish January 6 as a violent episode in American history. According to the Department of Justice, 140 police officers were physically attacked during the assault on the Capitol.
We didn't start anything. They came from all over the country here for violence. We just did our jobs, try and defend our elected officials. All of them, no matter what party they belonged to, we defended all of them.
After January 6 and the certification of Joe Biden's electoral victory, Congress set up a bipartisan inquiry to look into what happened that day. Ela Lura, then a Virginia congresswoman, was one of its members.
The committee was really working, instead of the Department of Justice working from the outside in, the committee was sort of working from the center out and saying, what caused this? Who was responsible? And, how did it spread to those people, who seemingly on their own came to DC, but really they didn't. There was a call to arms, the call to dispute the results of the election, to say that they were fake. And it always seemed much more difficult to ultimately hold responsible the people at the top or in the center of all of this than the individuals.
After 18 months of investigation, the commission examined 35,000 documents and took well over 300 testimonies before deciding that Donald Trump should be referred for criminal prosecution.
President Trump did not then and does not now have the character or courage to say to the American people what his own people know to be true. He is responsible for the attack on the Capitol on January 6th.
These conclusions, however, did not prevent the former president from being re-elected on the 5th of November.
The work of the committee was to present the facts of what happened that day to the American public, but that's really where our work stopped. I mean, the vast majority of Americans would say something like January 6th should never happen again. But the question, basically 4 years on, when someone goes to the ballot box, is that the most important thing that they feel will impact their lives and how they decide which candidate they vote for? I think that there were, more pressing and prescient issues, for those voters who decided to understand what happened January 6th, but look the other way.
Brandon Fellows got out of prison in May. He's on parole and has to stay in Washington. So he spends most of his time in the house of Nicole Raffit, the wife of one of his fellow inmates.
What you making?
A creamy tortellini soup.
The house serves as a refuge for those directly or indirectly linked to January 6th.
We'll have families that come in for sentencing, and it's a lot of expense for people. And traumatizing. They don't know anything about the city, really. No one's from DC, so it's a unique experience, really.
And they get support here too, rather than just being in a random hotel and being stuck in their thoughts.
Yeah.
If they want to vent, they can be downstairs and we can hang out. We can talk about whatever, or they can go hide upstairs.
January the 6th changed the lives of those at the Capitol and beyond. Nicole left her native Texas to settle in D.C. as her husband stood trial.
When I went into Guy's trial, and it was just so very much, it was very overwhelming. Once I did that, I said, if there's any way that we can go and be in support of other people that are going through that, not only will it make a statement, that we're not alone, because that's very much the feeling that they wanted all of us to have, is that you're alone, you're wrong, nobody wants to have anything to do with you. And I didn't want anyone to feel that way.
Brandon has no regrets about his actions on January 6th. Convicted on multiple counts, including obstruction of an official proceeding and several misdemeanors. He believes he was the victim of a harsh partisan court.
I don't think I should have served any punishment. The only reason I went in was because the officers were making me feel like I was welcome. They want to, demonize it and make it seem worse than it was in order to be able to go after us and make a point.
4 years after January 6th, two narratives continue to clash.
It's a beautiful building. Obviously January 6th, but there's so much more history to it than that. And I don't want that history to be completely overshadowed by one day, no matter how terrible. So, I think about America.
Every American, this is a symbol of what our country stands for. I think about the fact that this stands for democracy. And I would say that my colleagues who are still here have a lot of challenges to face in the coming days with the upcoming Trump administration.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all!
This group meets outside DC's prison every evening for a vigil in support of those locked up inside. The vigil is organised by the mother of Ashley Babbitt, the protester killed by a Capitol police officer.
This government murdered my child who served this country bravely overseas. She's deployed 4 times to the Middle East, served the United States Air Force, and came home and was killed by her own government, and there's nobody that's had to answer for that, and that's very frustrating.
Brandon knows the place well, having been detained here himself.
They were supportive to me while I was inside and also even outside, as you saw. So it's my little way of returning it.
This is also where Nicole's husband Guy is serving his 7-year sentence for 5 counts.
Go to your courthouse, go to your overpass. Let's make sure that everybody around y'all know that there's support for J6ers going into this inauguration.
January 6th has changed everything. My family is not ever going to be what it was before. Our country is never going to be quite what it was before. And I look at it on of the same mind on both aspects, is that something can be really great and not be the same as it was.
The January 6th community has had their resolve strengthened by the re-election of Donald Trump. To date, more than 1,500 people have been criminally charged in federal court. President-elect Trump has promised to pardon all of them on his first day in office.
Fanny Allard with Fraser Jackson revisiting the Capitol Riots for France 24. Well, that's all from this week's edition. Don't forget, of course, you can catch it in the previous editions as well on our website at france24.com. As more news coming up, thanks for watching.